Is that? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Hi, friends! Welcome back to my channel. My name's Ashley Aireonna, joined by Steph Sanchez today. Hope you guys are having a fantastic Monday after a good Easter. I was already telling Steph, but I'll let all you guys know if I'm a little bit dark, it's because I usually use this ring light, if you guys can see. And last week it burnt out on me and stopped working in the middle of one of my streams. So I was like, oh, I should get a new one. I go to bed that night. This was a couple nights ago because I didn't stream over the weekend. I go to bed, I rest my beautiful little head on my pillow to get some slumber. And then in the middle of the night, you know, sometimes you wake up to pee. I wake up and I'm like, what's happening? And all of a sudden there's this fluorescent light coming from my computer. My ring light had turned on. And so I was like, oh, I guess it has to charge or something, which I don't even think that's how these work. You just plug them into your computer. But I was like, okay, you know, it's the middle of the night. My ring light is possessed by demons. This is terrifying. So I just get up. I try not to think about it because I'm like, you know, I need my beauty sleep. I turn off the light. Don't go to Target because I'm like, oh, obviously my ring light is working now since it turned on in the middle of the night. And then right before the stream, I plug it in and now it's not working again. So apparently my ring light only works between the hours of 1 a.m. and 5 in the morning, which is going to be a whole problem that I'm going to be talking to the Target employee staff about. I'm sure they're going to be really helpful with that. But yeah, so if it's a little dark, that's why. Aside from that, hi Steph. I kind of just asked you about how was your Easter? Did you do anything exciting with family or just hang out? Do you do that Sunday reset? I'm in a weird in my TikTok algorithm is all these girls that on Sunday they clean their apartment and go grocery shopping, and I don't know why, but I like to watch that, I guess.
I'm not quite as organized, but you know, I had a good Sunday, I had a good weekend, so yeah, ready to get back into the week.
Heck yeah. I went to my grandma's. God, I have so many random stories. Where I'm originally from is the Boondocks. Do you know? I bet some people watching, since it's Bay Area based, Russian River area, Northern California. I'm from a small town called Rianito, which is literally not even on a map. Most people either see Guerneville, which is where the Russian River is, wine country, Corbell area, and then Forestville. And I'm there's just a one road blip is where I grew up, and my dad and grandma still live there. And last week I was freaking out because my dad, love you, dad, who's not watching this, is my number one supporter and is always watching all my streams. And he's also very military. So if he texts me and I don't respond, it's honestly really overstimulating. He'll call me, message me on Instagram, which he doesn't even use Instagram. He only uses it when he thinks I'm, I guess, not immediately responding to it. I'll be going pee, but if he wants to get a hold of me, I better answer right away. So he'll Facebook message me. I don't even have Facebook Messenger, but my dad is someone who's always very if I want to get a hold of him, there's never been a time where I've called and he hasn't answered. So he didn't watch 2 of my streams and then didn't answer the phone. And so I started spiraling, and I was like, is my dad dead or something? What happened to him? Why is he? Because he was sick too. And he asked me to bring him cough medicine, and I suck. And it was it was a Saturday, and I got that car light symbol thing, and I told my dad that I had fixed it, but I didn't. I just hadn't gone and taken care of it. I know no one cares about this, but anyways, I thought my dad was dead because then I tried to call my grandma and then she didn't answer because I was like, oh, obviously if my dad died, my grandma would have called me, or if my grandma died, someone would call me, right? And this is literally I had only not talked to him for 4 days, but I was spiraling in my head. I call my little sister, who's also over dramatic. So then she starts spiraling. She's like, I'm gonna call a wellness check on him. I was like, please do not call the police. I called him. The AT&T tower is just down in Rianito, so he can't watch this. I don't remember why that was relevant. I went to Easter at their house and didn't have cell phone service. But my little cousin was there and I got to play with him, and that was fun. Anyways, football happened. That's what we do on this stream, is we talk about football. My dad likes football but can't tune into the stream. I don't know how that conversation was relevant, but I'm glad we got it over and now we can get into things. Brock Purdy and Deommodore Lenoir were given some bonuses, which makes a ton of sense because they're both severely underpaid. And I guess the NFL has a little bit of something that tries to reward players who far outplay their contract. Obviously, both of them had incredible years, and so they were compensated for that. What did you think of that news when it comes to Brock Purdy? And then I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about Deommodore Lenoir, because he's actually accrued 3 seasons, right? So he is able to get an extension if needed. And last week I was talking, I think, with Tom Jensen, or maybe it was Marco from Clutch Team Sports, and we were talking about Charvarius Ward and maybe extending him, but obviously he's going to be on the wrong side of 30 coming up. Now he had a career year, but when it comes to Demo, 49ers drafted Deommodore Lenoir. He's obviously shown to be a very versatile player. He's been able to move around when needed. And I think if they were to extend him this year versus like trying to let him be a free agent or something, they could potentially draft a guy if they end up wanting to move on from Ward, and then have Demo locked down, because they don't have any cornerbacks locked up after the 2024 season, right? So how did you feel when you heard about those bonuses? Did you even know that was a thing? And then maybe we can get into Deommodore Lenoir a little bit.
Yeah, I thought like the bonuses were just like a part of their like agreed contract already, but it seems like this is outside of that. So yeah, it's pretty nice for those players, especially for Brock, who we know is severely underpaid just based on his production and what he's done for the team and being the starter for the last year and a half. I definitely think he deserves it. Also, Lenoir has been awesome. I think if this was the team kind of deciding to give him that, or I don't know, the NFL, I think it just speaks to how important I think he is going forward for this team. And to your point, like there's you have Mooney Ward, you have Ambry Thomas, and you have Deommodore Lenoir, who were your starters last year. We know the top two guys are Mooney Ward and Deommodore Lenoir. Both of those guys are not under contract past 2024. So they're playing this year, and then they're a question mark, right? And I think between those two guys, like if I had to pick, I'd probably go with Lenoir, just because Mooney Ward's been awesome. I mean, he's had the capability of being like a shutdown guy, and the both of those guys together have been great, and it's allowed the secondary to kind of grow. But I think Lenoir, just being the younger of the two, I think it would make sense for him to stick around, and the 49ers to sign him to a longer term deal. I mean, he's only 24. And like after the 24 season, he'll be 25. Let me see when his birthday is. It's it doesn't show me his birthday, but yeah, so he'll be like around 25, and I think that right there should tell you he should be the guy the 49ers should look to keep. Mooney Ward, on the other hand, is 27, so his birthday being in May, so he's about to turn 28.
Demo's birthday is October 6th.
Oh, okay. Great, thanks.
Yeah.
But yeah, like for Mooney, I'd be open to bringing him back, but I just don't know if the 49ers could afford like to bring,
because he might have like
guys.
outplayed himself, played himself into a higher price contract. Is that like what you're thinking?
Yes and no. And also like if that's how he feels, that he wants more, right? Which he has every right to feel that way. You just have to keep in mind that he's getting older. It's not as much a big deal with Lenoir because he's getting older, but he would still be young. Mooney would be entering 30 years old, say in the time of an extension, if it's like at least 2 years. So that would be, I guess, like my hesitancy with Mooney over Lenoir. And you have to remember too, they also have a lot of people talk about Samuel Womack. The 49ers are not interested in
which sucks. Like I like him, but
Womack. But Daryl Luter is the guy they drafted last season. I believe he was one of their 5th round picks last year, right? So definitely someone who they kind of hyped up, after the draft. I remember Adam Peters and John Lynch kind of saying like he can start right away kind of thing. Is unfortunately like an early injury kind of derailed his rookie season. They kind of like stashed him a bit, but I think his time is coming due soon as well. And they also signed Isaac Yiadom, right? Yeah. Who we can figure is probably going to be one of the starters. At least he's going to be favored to be the starter this season. But I would then expect Daryl Luter to hopefully start.
Okay, so maybe you're showing why cornerback might not be as like an essential draft pick as I'm saying. Not that they won't draft, but maybe they're not going to go like first cup, in between first round and third round.
I still think they could, and I definitely it wouldn't surprise me or upset me at all if they went with a corner in the first 2 rounds, just because their 2 main starters. And you could even say Yiadom you could even say the guy they drafted the guy they signed in free agency this year, Yiadom, who's going to be like that deal? 3rd guy. It's a 1-year deal, so he's also going to be. So who do you have after that? You really just have Daryl Luter. I think Samuel Womack's on the outs, maybe as soon as roster cuts this season. Ambry Thomas, we know, is probably going to be out. So I would say they definitely have to look at a corner at some point. And that's why, like, sometimes in mock drafts, if Kool-Aid McKinstry is there at 31, I take him, right? Just because, a lot of people, I think, are hesitant because he had the Jones fracture. I get that, but he also wouldn't need he also wouldn't need to play right away. So,
I think I'm more and more open to the idea of them going defense with that first round pick, which I'm still not like 1,000% there. You know what I mean? But like, I can understand the argument for it, where I think for a while I was like, this is completely not even acceptable. I do think that they tried to like solidify their roster in a way so they could go best player available within the draft and not try to like reach for someone if the offensive lineman that they've had their eyes on goes. I know that Mr. Corey says, I hope we trade up for a various Mims. I've heard a lot about Mims. I was talking to Tom Jensen, who that's his like draft cut crush, so he was very like, after talking to him, I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. But then when I hear, of a guy who's only played, started 8 games, that does scare me. With this being the first round pick that the 49ers have had so long, it still in some ways is a gamble. Like, you're gambling on traits, and maybe it feels like a little bit more of a sure thing because he, went to a good school and everything like that. And in the games he has played has shown up very well. But I do still think it's kind of scary to it feels a little more like a reach. And I forget the guy's name. I think it started with a J, but I think maybe there's like 6 guys who are projected to go like way earlier up in the draft, and I don't know if the 49ers would be able to get that far up there. But if they could go and get a guy who's started for a long time, I think that might be a better thing for them to do. But I don't know. It's hard to say that, right? Because then maybe Mims will go to the, the team right after the 49ers or whatever. Because I think everything we've heard is if he followed that, to 31, it would be like a blessing for the 49ers. So it's kind of hard for me to be like, oh, like they shouldn't draft him then, because it feels like everyone else is saying it would be like a really great move. I just still think it makes sense. Maybe it's just like PTSD on my part with the 49ers kind of missing on some draft picks where I'm like, oh, please make sure that these guys can end up being long-term starters. It feels like this draft, it is important to kind of start getting like the new crop for the bet. I don't know how to like say that in the bet, because obviously maybe every draft is getting the new crop, but like it feels like for lack of a better words, the like ability to run it back, revenge tour with the main stars that they have now. This might be their like last year, and moving forward, obviously I still think they'll carry some of those guys with them, but I think there'll be a higher rate of turnover, not just because of Brock Purdy's extension, if he ends up getting that, with which Jed York at the Orlando meetings basically, said that it's not a bad problem to have, and it sounds like as long as Brock Purdy, at least keeps up the same level of play he had last year, not that that's easy. He was, performing very well. But if he does, it sounds like the 49ers are more than willing to extend him. But it's not only because of Brock's extension that they would be doing that turnover. This team is just getting older. So they're going to need to start moving off of guys and having more of their draft picks play. I think after the last 2 rounds, it's like it's Brock Purdy and Brown, right? Jair Brown are like the only 2 guys who are consistently starting last year from the most recent drafts. And then obviously Aaron Banks, I think, but that was 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, with just to total up my Lenore thing, I was more on the I'd rather keep Ward than Demo mindset at first, just because I think Ward has had such an ascension with the 49ers and has performed so well. I really like his mindset. I also love Diamond Lenore's mindset. If anyone follows him on Twitter, I feel like I need a little bit of his like self-confidence. Like whatever belief he has in himself is why he's been able to, have such a great career, being, not the highest round draft pick that he was. He's still been able to solidify himself as a starter for this team. I think it would be a great business move for the 49ers to try to get something done this offseason, because I think it could actually end up being a lot cheaper. Now, I don't know if John Lenore has like the ability to say, I'm not interested. Maybe he would want to test free agency, because I think he could probably get more if he does become a free agent. But yeah, locking at least one guy down, I think would be very smart. And then I can still, even with that, I can still see the 49ers drafting corner high. I was going to actually ask you, when we're talking about the draft, kind of like going into it, looking at the different sides of the ball, looking at defense, I was going to ask you if you thought that they, with all the moves that they've made in free agency, if their defense has improved or is just as good as it was last year. And specifically, I was going to talk a little bit about their run defense when we talked about draft, because I was talking to Eric Crocker, and he has a draft crush who is a defensive lineman. But him and I were kind of talking about, well, actually, it's kind of like what's the saying? Like, did the chicken come before the egg type of thing? Like, do you want to fix the defensive line more, or actually is solidifying the secondary going to end up helping they work off of each other. So it is important to solidify that cornerback room. And I think I like what you said. Demo's younger, 49ers drafted him. That ascension that we just saw from Charvarius Ward have from, when he was at the Chiefs to now, that's like still in the cards for Deep. Like he can continue to get better, where not that Ward can't, but you do see like diminishing returns after a certain age, I feel like. So I can see the 49ers trying to prioritize their guys, kind of like they've done on offense. I mean, I guess Nick Bosa, but with Debo, now with Ayuk, I can see them doing something similar with Demo. Obviously, lesser, not as much of a star, but they still seem to like to try to keep their guys on the team if possible. And I think he could be a guy that they get at a discounted rate, especially if they move earlier on that. Now, I know that's not necessarily always what they like to do, but could you see them trying to get a deal? And can Demo say no to that? I never understand how that works. Like,
Yeah.
If the 49ers went to Demo and wanted to extend him, does he have the right to be like, I'm not interested?
Yeah.
Like, you know how
absolutely.
like Brandon Ayuk can't say no if they wanted, like, unless he wanted to sit out, basically. I don't really understand how that works. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, Lenore's still under contract, until so he can turn it down, and pretty much what he would be saying if he turned down an offer from the 49ers is, I'm going to play out the rest of my contract, so I'm going to bet on myself in 2024 and, hope that I play at a high enough level that I can ask for even more money than what you're offering me. Like, that's kind of why a player might say no, or if they're so set on leaving that said team, right? That could be another scenario, which I don't see that for Lenore. I think, he would be interested in staying with the 49ers. He has liked being here, all that stuff. So, I think it's more so of, does that player want to bet on themselves? And so that would be the question. I think for the 49ers, like, they probably wouldn't. I agree with you, Ashley, that I think it would be smart for them to move, I guess, quicker on Lenore, rather than waiting till like the end of the season. Or yeah, the end of next season, 2024. This upcoming season, I guess. It's so weird when we're in the middle of the off
Yeah.
season. Like, what do you call it? This season or next? But I think they would wait until the draft at least, right? Because if a scenario takes place where they get someone they really believe in the first few rounds, right? That they feel like, hey, this is a guy we feel can be a guy going forward. He's going to be a starter for us next season, like, guaranteed. Like, that's how strongly we feel. Like, if they get a guy like that, then they would probably be okay with taking that gamble of letting Lenore play out the season. And then if he outplays that contract, all right, let him walk, because we just drafted, like, his replacement anyway. So yeah, I think that's kind of, you wait for the draft, see what kind of happens. You kind of hedge on some things, and then make some decisions after that. But yeah, I think corner definitely something that the 49ers should look to, I would say, prioritize in the draft. Whether and this is regardless if they bring in Lenore or if they extend Lenore or not. I think they should look to bring in someone else as well.
Now, do you think with just the free agents pre-draft, do you think with just the free agents that they brought in that this defense is at the same caliber that it was last year so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to say, in March and April, before any
No, Steph,
football
I want you to
is
predict.
played.
I don't care that they haven't played together and that no one has seen them. That is a completely impossible question.
Well, if you look at the
And I'm going to hold you
personnel,
to it. This is recorded. So if they end up,
yeah.
whatever you say, I'm going to
if
rewind this during camp.
if you look at the personnel alone that they had started, last season with, like, this time last year, we were probably very optimistic about the defense, right? And then it kind of underperformed. So just, there's that as well. Like, if the 49ers don't underperform on defense this season, then yes, it could be better. Not because the players themselves are better, but, because, I don't know, different defensive coordinator, they're being used better. All those things could play into it as well. But if we're just looking on paper, the thing that tips the scales for me is Eric Armstead, right? Like, him no longer being on the defensive line is a huge loss for the line. And so I will say that everywhere else, I think they got incrementally better, on the defensive line. Like, I feel like they made small upgrades aside from Eric Armstead, because I don't think, like, again, I don't think that's someone you can replace with just one guy.
Yeah.
So I think if you look at all of the other guys they've lost on the defensive line, I think you could find a one-to-one kind of replacement for those players. Or maybe in Eric's case, you can find a couple guys who will probably take on, what his role, what it was before, right? So, I think I'm optimistic about it. I think the thing that's going to be different, and that's another thing that will make it hard to compare, is like, how many new wrinkles are they going to be with Brandon Staley being in the house, right? Like,
Yeah, it'll
obviously
be
Nick
interesting, like, what
Sorensen.
kind of...
Yeah, like, obviously Nick Sorensen is the defensive coordinator, but we know Brandon Staley is going to have some influence on game planning and what kind of happens on game day, right? So how are they going to be used? That's a
because it's
big
not just
question
personnel,
mark.
it's like a coaching difference, right? Like you're saying, I think I heard I think it was Robert Sala in Orlando was talking to some people, and he was saying that he felt like a big problem with the defense last year was just the lack of disguising that was going on
Yeah.
pre-snap. So maybe like it's not even just a I just hit myself in the face with this. Maybe it's not even just like a personnel thing, but also if the coaching they go after if they switch some things up, maybe that will also affect it. Now, what scares me is obviously the run defense was a huge, the biggest problem for them last year compared to previous seasons when maybe we thought that the defense was a little bit more dominant. And I think Greenlaw was like a huge, he's a huge guy who was able to tackle and stop things from happening. And I know that I think it was John Lynch was like, oh yeah, like Dre Greenlaw might try to start week 1, but then he also said that he could start on the pup list. Maybe I don't understand these things, but I assumed that he was going to be, at least a shell of himself for even maybe a lot of the season, at least regular season. I still put like a year on these things. I know some people, I think Derrick Henry came back in like 9 months or something like that. There were rumors of Aaron Rodgers coming back, but then he didn't actually ever practice or come back. When it comes to being a linebacker, you're really like, anchoring in the ground with that Achilles. It's not like you're just like standing back there. Not saying that standing back there is easy either, but I don't know. I'm not assuming that he's going to be the week 1 starter. I do see there possibly being a regression in the linebacker area for them, and maybe that affecting the defense. But obviously, also maybe they'll scheme around. You know what I mean? Maybe that just means they're going to play defense in a different way. So maybe it won't actually show up. But when I think of Dre Greenlaw, I think of a loss. When I think
that's another one too. That's definitely a loss. Like when you asked me, I was thinking more of the defensive line, just because there's been so many departures and then like additions. But like, I mean that's a big one as well, and it all kind of hinges on Devondre Campbell being the 2021 Devondre Campbell, right? All pro season. And I don't it seems like according to him, right? Like, he was misused. So
but okay. Because when he first said that, I was like, this makes sense. Everyone in the world bashed what's his name? The guy, the Packers defensive coordinator.
Joe Barry.
But that's when he had his breakout season with Joe Barry, first of all. So it's like, it's not like there was a change in defensive coordinator and all of a sudden he did worse. Also, when Kyle Shanahan was asked about like what he liked about Devondre Campbell, he talked about his rookie year and how impressive it was he was able to play his rookie year, because guys nowadays who are coming back at the line, coming out of the draft of the linebacker position.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I can phrase that better. But it usually takes them 2 or 3 years to, I guess, start playing in the league with the way that they play in college versus in the NFL now. And so Kyle Shanahan spent the majority of the time when he was asked to talk about like the skill set that drew him to him, talking about how impressive it was he was playing his rookie year. But that was like multiple years ago. So I was like, well, that doesn't really affect how he is right now. So yeah, I mean, I assume just because I do believe in Kyle and John's ability to bring in competent, coaches so far, and kind of scheme around these things. I mean, they had Colton McKivitz starting on the offensive line, and he, there's a lot of, I think I was looking at Pro Football Focus grades on him, and he wasn't even like rated that poorly. So I think that the 49ers do a good job at like covering up for areas of weaknesses. So I can see them doing that, but you're still like spending resources covering up for that, where if you just have a guy who's not even like a serviceable player, but Dre Greenlaw is like a star, then like I think that you can allocate more resources to, playing the game a different, maybe more effective way instead of trying to like cover up for a hole you might have. So I could see that being. Do you think that they'll maybe in the later rounds draft any linebacking position, or did they draft a line? They have some younger linebackers that haven't played, right?
They brought in 2 last season they drafted D Winters, and then I drafted free agent, or he was a later round. I don't remember, but I always forget his name. I don't know why. It
I have
was
Cam Latu on my brain, who I know
Jalen
is the
Graham.
tight
Sorry,
end.
it was
There you go.
Jalen Graham.
Right.
Yeah, so Jalen Graham, they re-signed DFF as well, right? Demetrius Flanagan Fowles, so he'll be
Yeah,
there.
he's been
But
solid.
he's more so like, I think more depth than anything. I think it's fair to say that there is going to be a drop off at the linebacker spot, where Greenlaw played. But yeah, I do agree that they do sometimes do a good job of masking it, but it might be at the expense of other things. I don't know. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah, Jalen Graham was drafted. I believe he was one of the 7th round picks. I know he was just way late. So, both of those guys. 49ers hoping one of those guys could take a next step, right? Like if D Winters can, push Devondre Campbell a little bit in training camp, who knows? Maybe D Winters gets an opportunity to play some in Greenlaw's absence.
Okay, I love that. Maybe moving off of that, I can ask you a little bit more than talking about the defense, and because like I said, we spend or the 49ers, not we, spent a lot of resources on the defense in free agency, and I was originally going to be extremely disappointed if they didn't go offense, and specifically offensive line, with their first couple picks. But maybe it's more likely than I assumed. Now, have you heard of, I have his name written down because I'm pretty bad at draft stuff, but Darius Robinson. Apparently, he has long arms, really good run stopper, extremely fast, physical, anchors hard, is 6'5", 287, but apparently looks leaner and moves leaner, or moves like more fluidly than you would assume, even though he is a very big, strong guy. Like I said, I was talking to Eric Crocker about him, not on stream, but just like between the two of us, and he said that was kind of one of his draft crushes, and he, I guess, is projected to go kind of earlier on, and he could see the 49ers really liking a guy like that. Do you think that the 49ers could use that first round pick on a defensive player, whether or not it's Darius Robinson or a cornerback or something else, or do you think that it is O-line no matter what, which I think is what fans want to hear?
The closer we get, the more like the less I can see him taking an offensive line. An offensive lineman. I don't know if it's just like, and it's crazy because when they signed I was gonna say McGlinchey, McKivitz to that extension, I said this doesn't mean they don't take an offensive lineman in the first round, which I still feel that. But when you look at how the draft is kind of projected to go and how many offensive tackles are projected to go earlier than the 49ers pick, then you get into this weird situation of, well, you don't want to reach for someone just because you need an offensive lineman, right? Like you don't want to.
There's like guys who are like
That's
projected to go
stupid
like
too.
in the 60s, and it's like, well, the 49ers could get them at 31, but then that's
Yeah.
yeah.
Or just just in any example, right? But yeah, I don't like that scenario either. So, and then you also kind of look at like positional value as well, and that's where things like an edge rusher like Darius Robinson, for example, who I know yes, he's very unlikely to be there at 31, but let's just say like a different position, like a Kool-Aid McKinstry, just another position that player would be ranked higher than the 6th, 7th tackle, at 31. Let's just say, like, you're at that point, the decision would be, okay, 3rd best corner versus 7th best tackle or offensive lineman. So like, what do you do at that point? And so the more I think about and see like all these insiders talking about how all these offensive linemen are going to be gone, like, well, before then, I think the 49ers, if they do want to tackle and they're set on a certain tackle in the first round, they're going to have to trade up for them. or take a swing on someone who's a bit of a, not a project, but maybe just like someone who you're not sure would start right away, you know? So then that kind of defeats the purpose too, because all the fans like want someone who can
Yeah,
compete
be
with
like a
Colton
plug and play
McKivitz.
guy. Yeah.
Exactly. So like if you know that it's not someone who has that much of an impact right away, then that also goes into the decision as well. And then, I'd probably lean towards another position at that point rather than taking a guy who's not going to be an impact player right away and he's going to just be another guy who we develop along with all the other guys who we have drafted to develop, right? Like the Nick Zakel, the all these other guys. So,
Can
yeah,
I
I
ask
think
you can I ask you if you would be in favor of the 49ers moving up? I know that you keep track of all the guys that they've been bringing in and stuff. I think it was more in the beginning and not so much anymore, but for a while it looked like they weren't looking at a ton of guys in the second round, and I was kind of thinking that maybe they were set on solidifying that first and second round pick to move up higher. I know since then they've obviously expanded everyone they've looked at a lot more, but is that something that you would be in support of the 49ers doing? Like, are you pro kind of sitting where you are, taking best player available, or do you think maybe it's smart if there is a guy on their draft board that they feel like they, feel really strongly about and the ability of that guy to perform well, be a plug and play starter like we're talking about? Do you think it is worth it to, because they have 11 draft picks, but I know like earlier rounds are obviously more important. Um, what is your feeling on trading up? Because some people can say trading up is more like reaching, because then if you miss on that guy, it's kind of like you miss out on 2 picks,
or three.
So.
I mean, yeah, I think I would be open to the 49ers trading up. I think the sweet spot for them would probably be in the 20s, and I would even say like mid 20s to Mr. Corey's point in the comments. Yeah, like 11 or 10 picks. I think
Feels
they have
really
10 picks at
strongly.
this point
Yeah,
because
because they had to
they
get rid of a
lost.
pick, right?
But 10, you're not going to bring in 10 rookies and expect all of them to make the roster, right? Like, or be impact guys right away. So yeah, I think it's, if there's someone they feel that strongly about, then yeah, you make that move. But to your point, Ashley, they better be a guy you're really sure on, because yeah, and David Lombardi just tweeted this earlier, like an hour or two ago, and he said the last time the 49ers owned pick 31, they traded up to pick 25, which again, that's not a lot of picks, right? They selected Brandon Ayuk with that one. It cost them number 31, number 117, so 4th rounder and then a 5th rounder. So they gave up you know 2 additional picks besides their number 31 in that trade to just move up, like, what is that, 6 spots? So
That's kind of
I
crazy.
I
I
could
didn't
see
realize that.
it. I mean, yeah, if you're going in the first round, to move up in the first round, you always have to give up, a
Quite a
pretty
bit.
decent amount. And again, it's a 4th and it's a 5th rounder. Now we look back on it and we're like, it was Brandon Ayuk. Like, who cares? That we gave up that much, a 4th and a 5th. And so again, you better be sure it's an impact guy, a guy who you got to be sure on that guy. So if there isn't someone they feel that strongly about, then they stand pat at 31. Maybe you explore moving up 1 or 2 spots for someone who, you're not really sure if they're gonna, make it to 31, right? Oh, I think the Ravens are gonna try to get the guy we want. Let's try to, move up a couple spots in front of them, right?
Yeah.
So they can always do that. I feel like that would be more likely than them moving up like 6
Well,
plus
yeah.
spots. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I definitely be open to it. And yeah, it would not surprise me.
Now, a different way that they could have a higher draft pick is if they moved off of Brendan Ayuk. But from the talks of everyone in Orlando, it seems like that's pretty much not an option for the 49ers unless they were to get a king's ransom, for lack of a better word, for lack of a better way of phrasing that. But how do you feel about, there was reports that came out, I think it was earlier this morning, might have been late last night, that said the 49ers and Brandon Ayuk were not even close, that Brandon Ayuk is asking for somewhere around $27 million because he wants to get more than Deebo Samuel, that the 49ers are looking to pay Brandon Ayuk something like $22 million. Obviously, we have no idea where these numbers are even coming from.
Yes.
I kind of assume that, like, the 49ers, like, I think if the 49ers are at $22 million right now, then we should be giving them applause, because I would assume that they're at like 20 right now. Because it sounds like, just from everything we've heard, it sounds like they start at like, we're going to pay you 15 and they work their way up slowly. And I wouldn't expect the Brandon Ayuk offer to be done until what, like late July at the early. I mean, with Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa, it was in late August and September. So hopefully, I mean, I want them to get. I'm pro getting Ayuk done as soon as possible, but I think Brandon Ayuk was saying he wasn't even going to start really caring about it till after his birthday, which just happened recently. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan and Jed York, I think, all talked about the draft, waiting till after the draft to really deep dive into contract negotiations and stuff like that. So once again, I don't know where these numbers are from, but just, did you hear about this report? Do you think that at the end of the day, Brandon Ayuk will make more than Deebo Samuel? Do you think that that's a fair ask for him? I kind of assume that, just because I assume, like, the cap goes up. So I never think that I always
the
think
market goes up, all that.
Yeah.
Yes and yes. I do think he should absolutely want more than Deebo Samuel, and I think he should definitely get more than Deebo Samuel, right? And yeah, I mean, I think any worry about it right now in March and April, like, is crazy. For these reports of they're very far apart is something we hear literally every year around this time for any player the 49ers are looking to extend, right? Just because it's too early. Like, the 49ers have their price that they're going to start off with, and Brandon Ayuk has a price he's going to start off with, and they're here and here, right?
Yeah.
The point of negotiation, which I don't even think they've gotten into the weeds of it yet, because the 49ers said they're going to wait till after the draft.
Literally was like, we're just talking.
Is to chip away and try to get to somewhere in the middle or close where you can compromise on that. But like, they're not there yet. They haven't started chipping away at the numbers. And so, that's why they're going to be far apart. I mean, I just think it's normal. We are going to get many reports like this from now between now and the time this extension happens, and is
that just because it, like, people are interested in that news?
Yeah, and it generates engagement, and people freak out about it. So
really quick before we get on with the Ayuk talk, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this, but says, is this released in audio podcast form? These are hard to catch live in New Zealand. First of all, thanks for listening from New Zealand. That's friggin' awesome. I don't know. I was going to ask Steph, do you do that? Because I don't do that. But I have heard, I know Ryan Hensley was just talking about starting to put his stuff on Spotify. I don't know exactly how to do that yet, but I'm really down to figure it out and start doing it. I know that on YouTube, at least for me, if you go to like my YouTube page, these are in the live section. Like, you can watch them after they've been streamed in the live section. And even if you don't want to watch, because when it comes to podcasts, I don't usually watch. I just play it like a podcast. You can just play it on your iPhone. But I'm definitely down to figure out the Spotify thing. I just thought I would ask you, Steph, if you do that already.
I mean, I put my 49 Carats podcast on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, but since this is your show and I'm joining you on it, I don't put these. I don't put these on there. I just put my 49 Carats shows on there. Yeah.
Well, everyone, please make sure to like and subscribe from Steph if you're not already from her channel, which I know a large majority of you are, and make sure to check those out. And then this was a great reminder for me to figure out how to do that. And now that I know Steph knows how to do that, I'll be sure to ask her about that. So thank you so much for bringing this up. to our attention, and also thanks for watching from all the way across the world. I was just looking at a map the other day, and my family's from different parts of Europe, and my dad really wants to travel everywhere. And since he's alive, which, if you didn't catch the beginning of this podcast, was a relief to me, sounds like we might be going to going to Europe later on. I was reading the comments and someone was like, "Wow, a lot of drama for a Monday," and I was like, "My bad." But okay, before I let you go, because I do know I think that you have a show at 4. There is the new rule with the kickoff. There's a couple new rules, but I wanted to ask you about the kickoff return, the kickoff rule specifically, because now that it's supposed to be more safe, I was wondering if you think it'll be something that the 49ers maybe are interested in putting Deebo Samuel or even Christian McCaffrey back there to try to take more of those all the way home for touchdowns, or if you think that they'll be drafting a return specialist in the draft, maybe trying to replace that Ray McLeod role, but hopefully get even someone even more. They might want to prioritize that more, since it sounds like that position will be more valuable this coming year. Or maybe they'll start off kind of hesitant. Like, I could also see teams kind of trying to figure out how other teams go about utilizing that, because I feel like the first year that teams implement things, they're like, some teams go 100% in, and some try to just watch what happens and then assess how they're going to do. I don't know. I feel like the 49ers do seem to be more of like a hesitant team. I could see Kyle Shanahan be the type of guy who's not going to super prioritize that this year, more watch what other teams do and then go off of that the next year. But I would like them to make that a highlight of their team. But
I mean, this is the year, because teams are still figuring it out, where the ones who are like prepared for it and do kind of like study the new rule in and out will be able to take advantage of that, of other teams still figuring it out. So do I think the 49ers are gonna look to have Deebo there? I think they'll definitely consider it more so than they have in years past. And as
they
we
had
know, like
him
last
back
year,
there in the playoffs,
exactly.
yeah.
So, but he wasn't the full-time guy there. It was more just because Ray was out. And
even though
Deebo
he didn't like really break one, I did feel like it, like maybe just as a fan, I was like,
it felt like he could,
Deebo's
right?
there.
Like,
They're serious.
Yeah, it felt like he could. So, I mean, I would even go as far as saying, like, even Christian McCaffrey, Juice, you put him out there and just see what happens. Why not? I mean, if it's supposed to lessen the injury risk, I mean, yeah, let's go for it, right? And regardless, I do think the 49ers should try to bring in someone that, they can, what is it called? Two birds kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
And then bring in someone in a position of need, say corner, say wide receiver, who has experience, and a lot of experience in college doing returns. Ronnie Bell, he tried it out, but he didn't do a lot of returns in college, so that was kind of why he wasn't really comfortable with it.
That's one thing, and it'll be interesting to see if they go full force or if they try to pull back with like a Christian McCaffrey, for instance, because Christian McCaffrey, I know this was a long time ago, but in college was a return. He did a lot of returns, so
yeah,
right. I don't think I'm wrong about that.
I don't remember.
Yeah. I heard he did that, but I don't know. When I said that, I like saw your face and I was like, maybe I'm dumb.
Yeah.
Sometimes I say things with like a lot of confidence, and then someone will like DM me after and be like, I don't know if that's true. And I'm like, my bad. This is the entertainment show, okay? Just kidding. But everyone, please make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. And then also make sure to like and subscribe to Steph's channel. She's about to go on in literally like 5 minutes. Mr. Corey said, would you guys be willing to trade our 25 pick to go into the top 15? I don't think that would work. I'd be willing to do it potentially, but I don't. Well, actually, no, I don't even think I'd be willing to do it. No. I want to savor those first round picks. We've gotten a lot. The 49ers, not we, sorry, have gotten rid of a lot of them. For me, I want to start prioritizing them. Unless it was like they could get one of the, top 3 offensive linemen. But in order to do that, I think you'd have to get into like in between the top 5 and top 8 picks. So I don't think that would be enough to do that, because I think people assume the 49ers first round pick is going to be, later in the draft. Just based off how they've been. But yeah, we'll talk about this more next week. I just thought it was a good question. I didn't want to leave you hanging, Corey, because I always really appreciate you. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you guys had a great Easter. Happy Monday. And yeah, make sure to like and subscribe. Tomorrow I should be live with either Jose, or if he can't make it, I'll be doing a call-in show. So if I'm doing that, please make sure to join me and go tune into Steph right now. I definitely kept her a little bit later than I should have. So make sure to go watch her channel coming up. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Peace.